Hey, let me tell you something genuinely terrifying. Imagine you, right now, dropped onto a frozen plane in minus 40 degrees with absolutely no gear. Your heart stops in just 30 minutes, even with the most advanced cold weather gear. The moment the wind picks up, your body heat is gone, just like that. But here's the thing. 30,000 years ago, in the middle of an ice-covered wasteland with no Gore-Tex, no electric blankets, not even a single tree, a group of humans built homes, cooked meals, raised children, and survived for thousands of years. Thousands of years, in conditions where you couldn't last 30 minutes. And they did it using techniques straight out of a modern architecture textbook. That's what we're talking about today. By the end of this video, you'll have no choice but to admit, the primitive people of 30,000 years ago were actually humanity's very first engineers. All right, first things first. Let's get one thing straight about what the Ice Age was actually like. A lot of people picture it as just a really snowy winter wonderland. That is completely wrong. The key was the wind. Winds of 100 kilometers per hour swept across the open plains, and when they hit you, the wind chill dropped below minus 60 degrees. Minus 60. At that temperature, your skin gets frostbite in 10 minutes. Cold air entering your lungs paralyzes your airways. Even modern polar explorers can't last an hour out there without full equipment. So what did Ice Age humans have? Rocks, bones, and animal hides. That was it. They punched through a minus 40 degree, wind chill minus 60 hell with just those three things. How? Let's break it down one by one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, they just lived in caves, right? Blocks the wind, stable temperature, keeps out predators. I thought the same thing. That's what we were taught. Textbooks, documentaries, all about caves. The Lascaux cave paintings, Altamira, Chauvet, all found inside caves. But were caves actually the perfect shelter? No, absolutely not. Start with the temperature. Without heating, the inside of a cave sits between minus 5 and minus 10 degrees. Better than outside, sure. But can you survive half a year at that temperature? That's basically torture. And caves are almost always damp. Cold moisture pulls heat from your body far faster than dry cold does. Well, just light a fire. Light a fire in a cave and the smoke has nowhere to go. It pools at the ceiling, coats the walls, and eventually goes straight into your lungs. Terrible conditions for long-term living. Then there's the deal breaker. Caves don't just exist anywhere. They're found in limestone regions, volcanic areas, coastal cliffs, very specific terrain. But Ice Age humans needed to follow mammoths and reindeer to survive. Those animals migrated across vast open plains. If the herd moved north, you moved north. Stay stuck in a cave and you starve. Bottom line, caves could work as a temporary hideout, but they could never be a home for thousands of years. So what was the alternative? The answer they found was surprisingly simple. Dig into the ground. But not just to hide from the wind. These people knew there was heat inside the earth. Even when the surface is frozen solid at minus 40, dig just 1 meter down and the temperature climbs above freezing. 2 meters down? It stays around 10 degrees all year round, every season. This is exactly the principle behind modern geothermal heat pumps, pulling the heat stored in the ground and using it. It's the core technology that makes passive houses energy efficient today. Did Ice Age humans understand this in theory? Of course not, but they learned it through their bodies. They knew, dig deeper, feel warmer. Excavated sites show most floors were dug down 50 centimeters to 1 meter. Some went nearly 2 meters deep. And there's another genius element here. Cold air is heavy. Warm air is light. When you light a fire inside a sunken structure, the warm air rises and wraps around the entire living space. Ground heat rising from below combines with radiant heat from the fire, and suddenly you have a completely different world from the minus 40 outside. No materials, just structure. Maximum heating efficiency. But here's the thing. Finishing the semi-underground structure wasn't enough. They still needed a roof. No trees, stones too heavy to move. So what do you build a roof out of? This is where it gets genuinely incredible. What was most plentiful on the Ice Age plains? Mammoth carcasses. Mammoths that died naturally or were hunted stayed perfectly preserved in the cold. No decay. It was like a massive open-air freezer scattered across the landscape. Ice Age humans used them as building materials. One mammoth skull, 100 kilograms. A pair of tusks, 200 kilograms. A single femur, thicker and longer than an adult man's thigh. The construction method was remarkably systematic. First, skulls were arranged in a circle to form the foundation. Heavy and flat, perfect for anchoring the base. Then femur bones and tusks were stacked alternately to create a dome-shaped frame. Tusks curve naturally, no extra shaping needed, they already formed an arch. And an arch distributes weight to both sides, the exact same principle used in modern bridges and cathedral roofs. At the Mazerich site in Ukraine, one single dwelling used bones from 95 mammoths. Total weight, over 20 tons. They built a 20-ton house. But here's what's even more shocking. The placement of those bones was not random. The same type of bone was always in the same position, sorted by size. That means there was a design in advance. They knew which bone went where. This wasn't improvised stacking. And multiple dwellings were built to similar specifications, which means this knowledge was passed down across generations. An oral building manual handed from parent to child. All right, the frame was done. But if wind slips through the gaps between bones, none of it matters. This is where another brilliant technique comes in. Ice Age humans sealed those gaps with a 3-layer insulation system, from the inside out. Listen to this. First layer, reindeer hide. Air is trapped between the dense hairs. That air layer acts as insulation. Same principle as a modern down jacket or wool blanket. Your body heat warms the air pocket, and the heat can't escape easily. Second layer, moss and dry grass. Moss absorbs moisture. When people breathe and cook inside, water vapor fills the air. The moss soaks it up. If moisture collects in the walls, your body heat drains away much faster. The moss layer prevented that. Third layer, woven reed or tough grass matting. The outer shell, directly blocking wind and snow. Here's what matters. These 3 layers weren't pressed together. They were separated. Air gaps formed between each layer. Why are double-pane windows so effective? Because of the air layer between the 2 panes of glass. They built that same principle, out of hides and grass. Moisture out, heat in. What modern Gore-Tex does today, they pulled it off 30,000 years ago. But here's the problem. The better your insulation, the worse your ventilation. Seal every gap and air stops circulating. Light a fire in a sealed space and smoke fills the room. Oxygen drops, carbon monoxide builds up. Even today, people die every year from running a heater inside a sealed tent. Ice Age humans faced this too. The stinging eyes, the coughing, people collapsing. Those experiences accumulated and they started designing airflow. The solution was simple but elegant. A small hole at the top of the dome. Warm air rises. Light a fire, and the heated air climbs to the ceiling and escapes through the hole at the top. Meanwhile, a gap was left low near the entrance to let cold air in. Cold in from below, warm out from above. A circulation system. The exact same principle as modern stack ventilation in architecture. And it gets better. Recent experimental archaeology research suggests the top hole had a leather cover. When winds were strong or temperatures dropped too far, close the cover to stop heat loss. When smoke built up, open it to ventilate. A manual damper. Hold the heat, circulate the air. That balance, that's the essence of Ice Age architecture. Keeping the body alive. Solved. But Ice Age winters lasted 6 months. In near total darkness, crammed into a small space, seeing the same faces for half a year straight. Modern research shows that members of polar expeditions experience sharp increases in depression and interpersonal conflict during winter stays. No light, restricted movement, zero change. It's devastating to the human mind. Ice Age humans faced exactly the same problem. But excavated sites reveal a fascinating pattern. The interior of each dwelling was clearly divided into zones: a cooking and fire area, a tool-making work area, a sleeping area, separated. This wasn't just about convenience. In a crowded space, once personal boundaries collapse, stress explodes. Spatial division was a survival strategy for maintaining psychological distance. And the Venus figurines, animal carvings, bone needles, patterns engraved on tusks found at these sites, these weren't just artistic expression. They were most likely psychological survival tools, keeping hands busy, keeping minds focused. 6 months of boredom and darkness poured into their fingertips. The technology that saved their bodies also saved their minds. So where did all of this knowledge go? Around 12,000 years ago, the Earth's temperature began to rise. Mammoths went extinct. Forests grew across the plains that had been frozen solid. With trees available, there was no longer any reason to build with bones. As the environment changed, the techniques were forgotten. Thousands of years of accumulated knowledge failed to survive to the next generation, buried underground. We didn't rediscover these structures until less than 100 years ago. But forgotten doesn't mean gone. Geothermal heating became the core technology of passive houses. Air gap insulation is applied in every modern building. The load distribution principle of dome structures lives on in stadium and airport roofs. Natural ventilation systems are now the standard in green architecture. The principles were discovered tens of thousands of years ago. Only the materials have changed. We called them primitive people, but they were the first engineers in human history, survivors of the most brutal environment our species has ever faced. Technologies are forgotten. The logic of survival never dies. What were you thinking as you watched this? If you can think of anything else we use today that might actually trace back to ancient wisdom tens of thousands of years old, drop it in the comments. If something genuinely interesting comes up, I'll turn it into the next video. Subscribing and liking helps this channel survive. Thank you.